You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode number 52. Before we get started with the upcoming episode, I wanted to let you know that when I recorded this episode, I had decided that I was going to stop doing the podcast at a year's time. And since recording this episode, I have changed my mind. So I'm going to continue with the podcast. So please ignore the comments that I make about no longer podcasting anymore. And in episode number 53, I'll talk about the new direction that I would like to go with the podcast. Until then, enjoy this episode.
A podcast uncovering identity, color, and love, where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Bias.
Welcome to the last episode of the Bear in Mind podcast. And I wanted to say thank you very much for listening. And I hope you enjoy this last episode, which is about when you decide to stop. And I mean anything, when you decide to stop doing something. And in that kind of category of stopping something is a subcategory of quitting. And there is no good or bad to quitting. Actually, we talk about it like, oh, quitting is bad. And sometimes quitting is necessary. And when it came to deciding whether or not to continue with this podcast, my goal was to do this podcast for 1 year, 52 episodes. And after the halfway point, a little after the halfway point, I wanted to evaluate if I was going to continue for another year. And around recording episode number 40, I decided I was going to stop. Meaning I wasn't going to continue after the 52nd episode. But also that subcategory of quitting crossed my mind. I'll just stop at episode 40. What's the point of continuing with the 12 episodes when I already know I'm going to be stopping? And that is quitting. That is quitting. And it would have been okay to quit. But here's the important thing about quitting, whether or not you decide to quit something like that or not, is you need to have that choice and own it. So if I had quit at episode number 40, it wasn't because I, didn't have time and all these excuses, or the podcast platform is getting saturated with so many podcasts now, and maybe I should go back to blogging and things like that. And that it's getting too hard, or I'm getting stuck developing content and things like that. Quitting and owning it at the same time means you could continue. You're stopping even though you could continue, even though you could go on. That's owning quitting. So if I had stopped at episode 40, it would have been like, okay, I know I'm stopping, even though I know I could go on. The other thing that came up for me when I was deciding about stopping the podcast is that it's not like a clear yes and no. And I don't know if it really ever is this clear kind of yes and no, because I was wanting to set another goal, and the way the time was working out, I can see that I couldn't make time commitments to this and something else. And whenever we want to stop something, I've been wanting to stop chocolate, and I've been doing pretty good at it. I'm not there at 100%, but I have reduced my chocolate intake a great deal since I had decided to stop. And one of the things is, if you ask somebody that wants to stop doing something in their life, they want to stop eating a bunch of junk food, they want to stop chocolate, anything like that, it's always like a yes and no. And that's okay. Because I often think in my head, before I had realized this, is that like whenever you want to stop, it's going to feel like a 100% yes. And I realized that so far in my life, nothing has felt like a 100% yes. When I wanted to stop chocolate, it was a yes and no. There's the no because there's a lot of pleasure in eating chocolate. And the yes is because I get skin inflammation when I eat chocolate, and so it's not a good idea to eat chocolate. And so then it seems like it's going to be, right? I kind of think, well, yeah, it's just going to feel like yes. When that is a 100% yes, then I will finally stop doing it, what it is, whatever I want to do. So when it came to chocolate and this podcast, there was no 100% yes. There was a yes and no. And continuing the podcast, because I was thoroughly enjoying it. I was thoroughly enjoying our conversations and talking about topics that I don't really get a chance to talk with people in my face-to-face life. So it's been such a great outlet. And then when I looked at my time commitments and this new goal that I'm setting from a year from now, there was no way for the amount of time it takes to create an episode each week to what I needed to accomplish a year from now. And that's really the heart of it, is that it's never going to be a good time to stop. It always like, oh, I'll stop chocolate after the holidays. And, oh no, well, I've had some after the holidays. I'll stop after, Valentine's Day when there's all this chocolate around or something like that. And that's kind of what I think maybe was going on in my head. Like there was this right moment that's going to arrive in my mind. And then I'm just going to be like, it's going to be a yes, I want to stop. And so, yeah, there's never a right time. And we kind of know this. I mean, we know there's no truly right time. And of course, it's intellectually knowing it. And then there's like this emotional part of us. And I think that what helped me kind of reconcile kind of that idea of there's no right time is that it's never ever. And if you think about your whole life, there's never going to be a moment when you want to stop doing something. It's going to be a 100% yes, because if it was a 100% yes, you would have stopped it by now. And then when you get to actually stopping the thing you want to stop, and so when I stopped chocolate, and now I'm stopping this podcast, that there isn't going to be like this total like place of happiness. Like, oh, I completed my 1-year goal. I made it to 52. Oh, look, I don't eat any more chocolate. And it's supposed to be like wonderful at this place. And yeah, that hasn't happened. I'm happy to have stopped eating chocolate. My skin is better. And yes, that's great. And that feels good on my body. Yet it's not like all of a sudden I increased the amount of happiness in my life. Like all of a sudden I experienced that emotion 10 times more, or joy or whatever. And I know that after I'm done with podcasting, with, all of the elements of this, rounding up this episode and uploading this so it's available to you, after that, I'm not going to be happier. It's not like that place after completing a 1-year goal is going to be somehow this amazing place. And what I do have in completing this 1-year goal is that I have built a sense of trust in my ability to complete a goal. And I talked about this in the previous episode, is that I completed it and now I'm ready to do my next 1-year goal. And I have gone in kind of now with this belief that, yes, I'm going to complete that 1-year goal. I do have obstacles coming away because each goal I'm setting it's going to be more of a stretch. Like with podcasting, I had to learn everything from zero. I knew nothing about creating audio files and doing all of that and editing it and all those things that are involved. Yet going into this goal, I realized that I will overcome the obstacles that I have. There are so many things I don't know about what I'm going to be doing, and most of it will come down to how I manage my mind around it. And so as I mentioned in the previous episode, I highly recommend that you set a goal, whatever goal that is, and wherever you're at, just make it a stretch. And if one of those goals involves stopping doing something, know that it's not probably ever going to be a 100% yes and no, and there's never going to be a great time. And that know that on the other side of that goal, there is not going to be a happiness, but there is going to be accomplishment. There is going to be that person that you become when you achieve that goal. And I want to thank you so much for allowing me to become the person that I am in this year. It's been a great journey, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.